Hi everyone. Today markets did show some hesitation at some trend lines here. We hit it in the previous trading session. We touched it again here today, over through the previous high just barely, and now we're selling just a little bit into the after hours momentum bearish. RSI showing weakness. Let's take a look at some of these charts and see if we can find some direction as we head into the new year. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. Looking at fear and greed, we stepped up to a 35 from a 34, very minimal movement, pretty much across the board. Neutral here on momentum, sitting just below those all-time highs. Strength continuing to crater into negative territory here. Haven't seen that in the previous 12 months. Definitely a change in structure for markets, in my opinion. Breadth has seen a bit of a step up, so that's a bullish indicator for the short term. Put call ratio still sitting in fear, right around that 0.7 area. It has topped out a little bit at 0.72, pulled back slightly to 0.7. I don't think this is going to be the top. I would expect a higher low, maybe somewhere in here, 0.66 potentially. Volatility stepping up a little bit here today. Safe haven demand, regular greed, junk bonds, fear. So bonds underperforming a little bit, while equities have rallied really aggressively over the past 3 trading days. Then looking at the economic calendar just for a moment, continuing jobless claims stepped up to a 1.9K here. Not great. That's as high as we've seen, far worse than expectations. And if you look into this at all, you can see here over time this has been climbing. The low was back here in the September of 22 timeframe. It's been rallying, and this is the highest number we've seen since all the way back here, 1.925K, and we are now here at 1.91K. So that was a bit of a blip, but this is continuing to kind of rise over the past couple of years, which is usually a leading indicator of some potential recessionary, depressionary environments coming within the next year or so, in my opinion. And then looking at the Friday, really nothing there. You have goods trade balance, not much. Retail inventories, ex autos, also not super impactful. That's really it. You do have crude inventories, not expecting that to be majorly out of line here as we head into the weekend. Moving over to Max Pain, you can see Max Pain right now, 594. Stock price right around that 600 area. Total options has stepped up a lot to 1.7 million. Put call ratio going up a bit as well to 1.9. Put wall 598. That's a little close to price. We'll see if that gets breached or not. Realistically, 590 would be the low in my expectation. Call wall 610. Top of the puts all the way up here in the 606 area. Somewhere 603 makes sense for me as well, but 605 has a little bit of options in there. Interesting to see that. So 606 is technically top of the puts. If we did get a really bullish finish, I'm not expecting that, but I wouldn't expect to get too much lower either. 598 is a pretty decent put wall. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see it closed just barely positive, just 4 cents on the day. Momentum continues to step to bullish, but the RSI, this is the thing we talked about yesterday. So we hit the SMA. Is it going to reject from here and get to a lower low? I think there's a high probability at this point that that's going to happen. Something like this, where you break down, move into the zone, retest that area, break down again, or another similar setup here, break down, retest the zone, break down, something like that. On the RSI, so far we haven't been able to get back above it. We tested it a couple times. Now we're testing it again. Lower RSI read, similar price action, and I would expect some lower lows to come. So you can see that here. Peak, RSI, overbought conditions, RSI weakening as price hovers, breakdown, similar price action here with lower RSI. Divergence fits, which is a bearish indicator. Right now, looks like a bit of a left shoulder head, right shoulder forming. You might have a little bit more time in it, something like this, where you get 2 or 3 days of sideways consolidation before this accelerates to the downside again, but I am expecting it to kind of break from this structure. We didn't get into the consolidation range like we talked about in the previous video. And you can see that here on the hourly consolidation range, very, very close, testing the lows of that consolidation once again. And you can see my levels there. 599.64, we're still in that range. 603.25 was the high of this range, and that was the low of the previous consolidation. Still have not been able to get into that range. Still in this zone here. As long as 599 holds, we're in good shape. If this structure breaks here, we're probably headed back to that 585.91 area. So far looks okay, but definitely slowing, and this close is not great. You can see came into this trend line, tested it a couple times. Last candle, gap to it and sold off, selling a little bit more after hours. Is it going to go right away? Maybe not. Like I said, you could get a little bit more consolidation in here. 599.64 is the level, and then if this trend breaks in here, 597.90, 598, somewhere in here, that's what I'm going to be very concerned, because you could be looking for a move back to this level here once this breaks, which from current price would be about 2.5% lower. And then looking at the hourly here on the Tasty charts, you can see we did touch that upper band just for a moment. Sideways consolidation, very close to that 8 EMA at 600.98. Volume coming through on that last candle, which was a selling candle. Not what you would want to see. Momentum hasn't moved with it, but seeing that volume selling at the highs into the close, again, not great. And then looking at that 4-hour just for a moment, you can see that upper band price target would only be 603.68, which gives you a little bit of upside, not a lot. Still bullish conditions, no change to that. Moving over to the NASDAQ, you can see we came up and tested this trend line here. This is the midline of this kind of trading range trend that we saw to the upside here. You can see that midline, retesting that. Did show rejection there after breaking it on the Tuesday session, gap down, retested it, and then closed below it just barely. And then you can see a little bit closer here. This is the structure that I'm trying to see, is if this is going to be a medium-term structure. Right now, we're testing that upper limit. You can see the trends here. You have the bottom, which is what's forming the structure, and then just the parallel lines off of these here. And now we've tested it. So far, it's holding as a potential zone of rejection. You have an inside candle, could not go higher. And unlike the SPY, this was actually negative on the day, 36 cents or 0.07%. Momentum not great. RSI did not get the test here. So we did break down a little bit as this SMA is trending down. If this starts to accelerate, you could expect a lower low on the RSI, which would bring price with it. And then if we get the rejection here, the trend support is all the way at this lowest trend, which would be about 4% lower. So if this structure holds, this is absolutely a key level and a big warning sign for that medium term potential change in structure. And then similarly here on the hourly chart, you can see test the level, came up, test the level again, reject, selling action. Not a whole lot of volume on the day after Christmas, but that's to be expected. And in terms of levels here, 530.08 was my level. Did not close above it. Came right to it on the Tuesday. Came right to it again here on the Thursday. Sold off. Could not close above it on the daily chart. Did briefly on a couple of candles on the hourly, but momentum bearish. RSI definitely bearish. You can see key here starting to sell off. Volume on the selling action breaking down. Everything says this should pull back a little bit more to potentially this 526.50 area, which is not a huge sell. It's about 0.5%. If this zone holds, if it breaks down from there, then you're looking at the lower high structure that we talked about on the previous with this here. And then your midpoint from there would be about 1.8, 1.9% lower. And then moving over here to the Tasty charts on the hourly here, you can see on this move down on the 26th to this midpoint, that actually put us into bearish conditions on the hourly chart. So the Qs are actually in bearish conditions on the hourly, not the same as the SPY. Came into that zone, started to sell. So this is critical here. If it starts to break down, that's going to be a major change in my opinion. We closed below the 8, not quite below the midpoint there, but it is below the 21. Those are very, very tight on the Tasty charts. Right now, that 21 is sitting at 528.45, which is just barely below current price. You can see right in here, critical zone. If it breaks down from there, then you're looking for those lowest ATR bands, potentially in that 525 area for the very short term. And then looking at the 4-hour chart, you can see this sideways consolidation. This is starting to look very similar to this price action here, where you get sideways choppy for a couple of days and then you see a major breakdown. Again, if we get that acceleration here to these lower levels, that would be around 513, and this would be a high, lower high, which would be a major change in structure for the Qs. We haven't seen that in a long time, and if this forms, that is very, very concerning. Right now, ATR bands still trending up, still bullish conditions, still above the 8 EMA on the 4-hour. So right now we haven't seen it, but that is what I am looking for as the potential change. Moving over here to the Russell and the Dow, very different story. The Russell was up 1% to the key level, 226.02. So this did exactly what we thought it was going to, push to the key level, got a test there. Hit the 9 EMA, momentum stepping to bullish. I like this a lot better than the other charts. I think we can get a little bit more out of this. 229.18 I think makes sense. You got the 55 EMA in there as well, some trend resistance in there. This looks strong. I think we can see some more. And then the Dow, very slightly positive, more in line with the others. You can see the breakthrough on the RSI, so that might show a little bit of strength with the close above it. Interesting. Doesn't mean you can't immediately reject from there, but it does look a little bit better than some of the others. The NASDAQ honestly looks the worst out of the group. And then looking at the technicals, you can see that 55 EMA closed basically on top of it to the penny. 433.15 was the 55, and we closed at 433.21, so above it by just 6 cents. And you can see after hours we sold back below it just a little bit. Closed above 432.78, which was my level. As long as you hold that, you can look for a push up into this zone here. Trends at the 436.81 area. Either way, I like both of these more, and the Russell probably looks the best out of the group. It is selling just a smidgen after hours, but want to see it break 226 and push to 229. Moving over to Mag 7, negative day here as well. Critical zone here. Push through the trend, still holding the lower high momentum, stepping back to bearish. RSI also looking terrible with the breakdown, not quite retest, starting to break down again. If we don't get a bounce off of these trends and a continuation up to here in the 345 area, that's going to be quite bad. Short term, you could look for a test of the 21, which is about 3% lower. But if this whole area changes structure and we break down to the 55, that's about 9.5%. That would obviously be catastrophic for markets. Right now, momentum and RSI both say this should go lower, and it does look like a high, lower high, looking for a lower low somewhere in here. Moving over to some individual stocks, really I just want to talk AMD here for a moment. You can see we caught a bounce off of this 118.83 level. Interesting, it is a lower low from this previous low here, so structurally it's still not super great, but we did catch a bounce and we did close above 124.40. You could watch that level. It did sell a little bit today. If it can hold 124.40, I would look for a higher low here, and then you could look for a push to that next 132.45 area. Right now it would still be kind of a bear market rally for AMD. It's been a terrible chart really since mid-October, but the fact that it's been so terrible during that time period, it's down about 32%, tells me this is probably due for a little bit of a retracement. Not all of it, maybe some. 10 to 15% makes sense. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple continues to go up seemingly every day. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, new all-time highs for Apple. Microsoft down 0.25%. Tested the level, 440.72, so you did get a very slight continuation. Touched the level, rejected from there, closed inside candle, not great. Momentum has not switched to bullish yet, even though we've seen a little bit of bullish action here. If this reaccelerates to the downside, that's going to be terrible. But if we kind of hover flat, wait for this momentum to culminate and then start to swing to the bull side, that would absolutely be a very bullish indicator. Look for the break of 440.72 with the change in momentum here. That could give you a kind of catapult move back up to that 453 and then potentially back to those all-time highs around 466. So something to watch for 440.72. If it continues to hold as resistance, definitely look for the breakdown. If we hover, look for the swing on momentum. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla down 1.76, nothing crazy. Momentum's back to bearish, RSI is back to bearish, which is interesting. Maybe this is a double top forming, but it's still holding above the 9. That is at 447.05. As long as that holds, you're in good shape. We did break below it here, did end up getting back above it. So at this point, I want to see it hold above that level. If it breaks, this is probably going to be a topping formation. And then looking at NVIDIA, we tested the 140.76 level, rejected from there, tested it again here today, rejected from there, and it's selling after hours. So now this is probably done. This is probably going to be a structure. Something like this makes sense to me, where you can see pretty consistent lower highs here. You also have a structure in here. Candle break marks a perfect low here. Touch that level again before bouncing. And if this sells off back to that trend, that is going to be about 10.5% lower. Right now, momentum is bullish, RSI kind of flattening out there, key resistance. If it continues to close below 140.76, I would look for that acceleration lower to a new lower low and the trend support, which is right in line with my level here, 124.69. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples was positive 0.3%, discretionaries not so much, down about 0.3%. So a little bit of a flip there, kind of some risk off type price action, rallying after hours, 79.90. 90 is your next level on staples. We talked about the hold at 78.88. Big wick rejection, big confirmation up, momentum back to bullish, RSI bullish. Everything looks like this should continue to swing up for me. And then price targets, if 79.90 breaks, you got some EMAs in here at 80.30 and then 80.54. And then looking at discretionaries, pretty much the same kind of structure with the high, lower high forming trend resistance in here. Inside candle, momentum still stepping sideways, slightly towards bullish, but the RSI, big breakdown, no retest, continuation lower. Could just be off volume. That would be interesting, but for now, this looks pretty bearish to me with that key resistance. For tomorrow, that trend will be 234.37. Moving over to breadth. Breadth continues to look strong. I'm still a day lagged on breadth until next week, but for now, we'll stay looking at yesterday's action, which was very bullish. You can see 20-day breadth did close above the 16 level here for the Tuesday, right to that 9 EMA, momentum swinging, RSI breaking out. Same here on 50, big breakout of this consolidation, momentum swinging, RSI swinging. So everything on the breadth indicator says markets should be showing a little bit more recovery. I think it'll be interesting to see what this looks like in tomorrow's session. As we head into the weekend, is it going to hit these key levels and then reject? Kind of the way that the price action is looking, that would be concerning. Maybe you get a bit of a double bottom, maybe higher low setup, and then continuation up. That would be interesting. But for now, this does look a little bit bullish. Moving over to the dollar continues to consolidate and is actually selling a little bit here into the end of the session. 108 is still the level, trend resistance continuing to happen there. Momentum bearish, RSI still above the SMA, still holding basically flat as it slowly trends higher with these higher lows and higher highs. If you get that higher high in here, that would be up in the 70s. That would give you an overbought condition again. So far, not happening. Hourly chart looks a little bit bearish. Probably going to come down and touch that 144 EMA down at 107.95. If the dollar sells a little bit, that should give equities a little bit of strength, but it's selling into the end of the session and equities didn't seem to care about that. But something to consider. Dollar seems to have stalled out on this massive rally that we've seen. Moving over to bonds. Bonds catching a nice move here. JNK up about 0.25%. TLT basically flat after touching that low. Momentum though, stepping to bullish on both of these, looking pretty good. Testing the SMA on RSI. Might reject from there. It is still trending down. Not super great there, but showing some strength on the price action, touching the 9 EMA. Want to see TLT get back above the 89.16 area. I still think that that is going to happen. I still like bonds over the medium term, especially with this step here. I like how this is moving. Moving over to the VIX, you can see the VIX was positive a little bit, 3.15%. Momentum still selling off, RSI still basically flat, but key level here, 14.7, closed basically on top of it after stepping up a little bit, gapped higher, through big wick, and then sold off right to the level. This is interesting, right? So if we start to see this swing up here into the 18 area, that's going to be very concerning. That's going to be a higher low setup. And adding some structure here, it does seem to make sense with these higher lows. And if we do get a swing up into that 18, potentially up into the 24 area, like I said, that's going to be concerning. This has been holding, couple here, touched it on the Tuesday and then bounced from there. So VIX signaling a little bit of downward price action in my opinion. Moving over to my accounts, I think I managed to stay positive just barely with the Qs selling off and the Russell staying positive. So rolled out here on the Russell to 224 for a $2.71 credit, trying to give that some room to go higher. I do think it will. And then looking at the Qs, I did roll down actually for tomorrow's session. Very concerned about that. I don't like the way that the short-term charts look on the Qs or the SPY, especially with the bearish conditions on the Qs on the hourly, on the Tasty charts. So I would stay pretty conservative. I like the Russell. The Russell definitely looks better. The Qs, not so much, showing a kind of topping formation. Doesn't mean we can't go sideways for maybe one more day into the new year, but definitely interesting here on the Qs, showing a negative day. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the charts today. What do you think of that topping formation? Is it going to be a double top rejection tomorrow, or are we going to get some sideways consolidation and potentially continuation to the upside? Put it down in the comments. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.